Hi, this is David, and welcome to another episode of Right Politics. So, I recently studied for the SIE, which is an entry-level stock, basically certificate for license, which is right before the Series 7. And I was studying about how governments are able to purchase stocks and bonds. I always thought it was fascinating because I always thought that it was for governments that were able to do this, such as communist governments, where they could actually purchase bonds for profit. But I realized that even as low as the state level and city level, government entities are able to purchase bonds that could have a AAA rating, which means they're most guaranteed to make a profit. So they use the income from these bonds and stocks for building bridges, etc. So what happened is, about a month ago, the Fed signed this into law where they were able to purchase the stock market, and they were able to purchase these things called junk stocks. And what junk stocks are, they are a minus BBB rating from the FINRA organization. So it basically means that these stocks are about halfway on the scale from being risky to the stocks defaulting altogether, and that's why they are cheap. So the idea that the Fed was going to purchase all these stocks at a discount rate to help boost the stock market was actually a horrible idea, in my opinion. What they could have done is they could have put these millions of dollars, probably close to $1 billion, into these funds that are actually controlled by hedge managers, or they could actually hire their own entities and do it themselves. If they were to put that money into a dividend stock such as Ford, it would have made about a 10% income for the duration of them owning the stock. So, just doing the basic math, if you put $1 billion into a stock like Ford that pays a 10% dividend, you would actually get about $100 million in revenue per year that you own the shares. And it seems like this would be a lot more approachable and profitable for the government to actually purchase stocks of these failing companies instead of bailing them out. So if you're going to bail out airlines like American and Southwest, there's other ways that you can do that. You can actually purchase their stock, which means in return you will be able to gain a profit from them. So you're not just giving the money away. It's more of like a loan. The reality is the stock market has soared even in the midst of pandemics. So what it is there are these two types of investors that are in the market. There is the institutional, which have mostly corporations, and they have over $100 million worth of money to invest. Then about 20% of the market are private investors, such as people who are on Robinhood and Fidelity and all those basically free trading platforms, and they have very small amounts. I would say I read an article that the average investor on Robinhood has a portfolio net worth of $5,000 compared to the institutional investors, which have $100 million or more. So when you look at the overall market during the recession, people, I would say, I read an article that 70% of people who received their stimulus checks did not spend it. They either saved it or invested it. There are 90 million new Robinhood investors as of last month, and there are banks such as Citi that has seen a deposit rates in their banks of $2 trillion in the month of June alone. So what that means is the reason why the stock market is going up is not because of individual investors. It's because of the government purchasing these stocks at a discount rate, hoping to keep the economy going by having the stock prices go up. But what they don't realize is someday the government will have to sell those stocks, and when they do, there's going to be a huge dip in everything that they purchased. You also see volatility in these stocks, and it's not because individual stockholders are buying and selling at a large rate. It's because corporations, institutions, and the U.S. government sells them all at once, and then you see a huge drop. Same thing with Bitcoin, which is also illegal. I mean, you can't just purchase $100 million worth of Bitcoin, keep it for a month, and dump it. It's called pump and dump, and it's illegal, but that's exactly what these corporations are doing. If you've ever seen a stock drop by like $5, $10 in about 5 or 6 seconds, the reality is there's no way that many individual sellers can sell at once. It has to be a large corporation who has $100 million worth of shares in the company, or the government who would also have the same. Also, can you imagine if in the era of Reagan, for instance, in the, let's just say the early 1980s, like 82, they purchased about $100 million worth of stock that pays about 10% dividends. Can you imagine that every year they would have received $100 million that would have been a substitute for tax income, and that $10 million would have grown over the course of 30 years to an amount that we haven't seen? Now, it's very much a fact that the U.S. government spends about 15% more on services than they actually take in with taxes. And honestly, I believe if you could get a portfolio for the United States government of our annual income through taxes, that extra 15% could be reduced down to 5% just by dividend payments from these large corporations. And I'm not saying that it's rocket science, but I really think that there are better ways for the U.S. government to spend the taxpayers' money than buying junk bonds. And that's exactly what they're doing. And they're actually doing it with no oversight. And it's just one of those things, like, are we going to continue to see the stock market rise just because the U.S. government are buying these very poor companies? And if they really wanted to make a profit, they would invest in the high-tech companies like Facebook and Tesla. But it looks like they're going for the lower-grade companies. So I really want to know your guys' thoughts. Like I said, I did study this. I spent about 60 hours on this project studying. I will probably leave a link in the description if you guys ever want to get started with Robinhood. There's one free share. I've been doing it for about 2 years, and I've seen a lot of good results. So anyways, be sure to like and subscribe. This is my second video, so there probably won't be a large subscription based, but hopefully it'll grow in the future. Have a great day, guys.